but only to speak for themselves, I've noticed. When it comes to defending the right of others, it has been my experience that hell has no fear of a woman's scorn or a librarian defending his or her community. And it would be only my hope that my dear sweet colleague would demonstrate as much pluck when defending their own interests, or God forbid, their salaries. So I have to admit that as honored as I am to receive this attention, I'm also a little bit conflicted because of the attention that I'm getting for doing this job basically for free. Because even though I am doing it because I want to, and I have absolutely no intention of quitting, I still believe that it's a job that we all went and did a lot of schooling and got a lot of education, which in this country is not free, to get masters in library science, and that this needs to be recognized and compensated. So, that's what I feel all about getting the recognition for doing it, because I in no way want to sound like I'm advocating that librarians should do their job for free. I just want to let you all know. Just doing that for what choice. Anyway, I came here wanting to tell you something uplifting and, making you all feel good about what you do, because we do good things and we should feel good about them. And on my way to the conference yesterday, as I was about to board the first plane from New Orleans to Charlotte, I got a phone call informing me of what was going on in Paris. And so I just had a chance to fire off a few emails to find out if my family was okay, and had to wait until the plane landed in Charlotte to get the answers. So that was rather exciting. And it's tied in with the reason that I'm here. I got here very late and I put CNN on, and there was a young man that was being interviewed by CNN about a witness of having witnessed, the horrors of what was going on in Paris. And his answer was, well, right now all I want to do is to get counseling. He said, I'm just a tourist. I am not part of the armed forces, and I was not trained to see people shoot other people. I'm not dealing with this very well now on counseling. I could have hugged him and told him, darling, nobody's ever trained to see people shoot other people. The truth of it is that it is estimated that over 80% of the kids in New Orleans have witnessed a violent crime. And having lived in the Lower Ninth Ward for the past 5 years, I can guarantee you it's true. They all have PTSD. And the people that are committing atrocities like what happened in Paris yesterday do it not because they have a different concept of reality than we do. They're doing it because of this. Incidentally, I happen to live on Frederick Douglass Street in New Orleans, and when one of the preconditions for treating people as less than human is to deny them their humanity. And so, when people feel like they've been denied their humanity, they somehow behave in ways that do not appear to us human. The trick is to put them out of this situation. We do outreach because we want all of us to belong to the same family. We want all of us to have the same chances. We want to equalize the playing field. All right, so now let's get to the fun part. So it was while in library school that I came across the story of the mule-packing librarians of Kentucky that went riding through the Appalachians during the Depression, and they were carrying people. There's a lovely children's book, That Woman, that was published recently about that. And to me, that defined the meaning of outreach. The Muslims are saying that if Muhammad cannot go to the mountain, let the mountain come to Muhammad. If your patrons are not coming to you, you go to them. But why might you ask go to such length to put books in the hands of children or people in general? Well, for me, it all came down to the pigeon. The pigeon has been a recurring figure in my career as a librarian. It started when I was appointed to be children's librarian, and I had just started at New York Public Library. I'd been in the system for maybe less than 2 years, when all of a sudden they gave me the prize lollipop of the whole system, which was the Seward Park Library. So that was the picture, that was the stuff on it. This beautiful building right in the middle of Chinatown. There's a huge amount of schools around that building. And so I was happy. I was the only children's librarian, and I had to host about 3 to 4 classes a day, including a whole bunch of kindergartners who all came from Chinese-speaking family, and none of them spoke a word of English. And here I was supposed to instill a lot of books into all those happy, freshly smiling children, and it was not going to be with my knowledge of Cantonese. But I had the pigeon. Mo Willems had just published his book, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. No, that's not. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with my technology here. Pigeon.
Down.
Oh, there's Mr. Bonder. He's sitting his head. Yay! Pigeon.
Yeah.
Pigeon, yes! Don't let the pigeon drive the bus. By Mo Willems. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with that book. So, this is a very funny book, and all I had to do was read it out loud, and all these little kids would be rolling on the floor laughing. They left loving the library, and they only wanted to come back, and I had my job cut out. So when I was awarded the inaugural Lemony Snicket Prize for Noble Librarian Space University, a title that I'd like to honorably bestow to everybody in the audience, by the way, I was given a splendid plate that Mo Willems himself had drawn that was showing me riding the bus, riding the bookmobile. I was totally thrilled. So you can imagine how excited I was when, after getting so much media attention on that, this amazing lady, Jennifer Francis from Best the Book Bus, just got me out of the blue one day and said, well, you know, I had this deal with Mercedes-Benz, and they're going to give me a new book bus. And the first one that I built with my dad, it's only 10 years old, but it's a Mercedes and pretty good, and I really like to go to a place where it's going to do good. So I'm going to give it to people like that. And so she gave, and then it was the pigeon driving the bus. It's the only part of the bus I didn't paint over. I'll show you the next pictures. I painted all over. But yet, if you think of it, the pigeon is a rather depressing story. It's a story of a dream shattered. He doesn't get to drive the bus. He even says so. Oh, here we go. Pigeon start. I have a dream too, and we destroyed his dream. He couldn't get to ride the bus. So these days, when I read the book to my young audiences, I always tell them, why did you think the pigeon couldn't drive the bus? Why do you think the pigeon couldn't ride the bus? Anybody?
He doesn't have hands to hold the steering.
He doesn't have hands. It's making driving difficult. What could he do in order to be able to drive the bus? Anything he could do in order to be allowed to drive the bus?
Prosthetic arms. Prosthetic robot arms.
Okay, now let's say that the hands are not an issue. Let's say that
He could get a driver's license.
he could get a driver's license. That's right. And for that, he's going to need to learn how to read. Of course, the pigeon, having a bird brain, soon forgets about his dream and enthusiastically follows the next one, which might be a puppy or a truck or whatever. But when we raise children, we are hoping to help them to keep sight of their dreams and also make sure that they have dreams to begin with and that they have the means to pursue them. A child who's held prisoner of his or her circumstances, be it economic poverty, but also poverty of the mind, poverty of the spirit, poverty of the imagination, will never get to drive their bus. A child who's never been to the seaside will probably have limited chances of dreaming to be a sea captain. And so, had the pigeon never seen a bus, he would not have dreamt of driving one, and he couldn't pass his driver's test. My dream was to have a bookmobile. And when I had to raise the funds to be able to get the driving lessons and the insurance and the tag and so forth, and the some paid job, which I actually, I called the project Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. But not this one. We don't get it. And it worked. We raised this was all done on social media, and it's not quite Kickstarter, it's iDEAL or something like that, but that's the only way I did the funding of this one, except for Daniel Hamburg, God bless him. Books open windows, and they let us travel and experience through the language of others. They allow us to dream, and they can even give us the means to accomplish those dreams. They also teach us empathy. Fairy tales are morality tales. They give us 3 chances to try out the solution. The older brother who did not say hello to the old lady, the one who did not feed the animal, the one who did say hello to the old lady, the one who did feed the animal, the one who had the courage to continue and the perseverance to reach the goal. When, as part of my job as outreach librarian for New York Public Library, I started bringing books to incarcerated teens at Rikers Island and Bridges and places like that. I noticed that my kids were not exposed to the mythologies and fairy tale that constitutes the fabric of our popular culture. They had all seen Shrek, but none of them could tell me what the gingerbread boy was about. None of them. So in fact, I came to find out that besides being Black or Latino or mostly of low-income background, the other thing that they had in common was that almost all of them, none of them, had been read to or told stories when growing up. When I first started coming to New Orleans as a volunteer in the summer of 2010, I had brought nothing but a suitcase of children's books and my pet bug. It's not this. Oh, I didn't show you the great pink jobs. Okay, so we went from this, and now she looks like this. So that's the front. That's the side. That's the other side. That's the picture. And that's the back. And this is Mr. Fluffenberg. Comes in very handy when we tell Peter Rabbit and Brer Rabbit and all kinds of dumb stories. Matter of fact, he was so, well, anyway, I'll tell us that story later. I moved into a small utility apartment with a big yard that I was sharing with 2 other families, and one of the families had 2 little kids and 3 children. It was in July, school was out. I was a new kid in town, so everybody wanted to play with me, and there was nothing to do. It was hot as blazes. This was in 2010. The lower Ninth Ward was still barely recuperating from the aftermath of Katrina. There was no community center. There was nothing. The local branch of the public library was conveniently open 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. But that was during the school operating hours because it was inside the school building, and the school principal was so nervous about handing over the key because the Army Corps of Engineers had threatened to destroy the building because supposedly the foundations were shaky after Katrina. They were not. that she did not want to relinquish the keys to any other entity, and so she was closing the building, which contained a public library, anytime the school was not open. So the kids had absolutely nowhere to go. So I started bringing, we had a lovely yard with a big pecan tree, and when the sun started coming down a little bit and the temperature was bearable and it was shady, I brought out a blanket and I let my big fat bunny run around the blanket, and I brought out books and I started reading to them. And they enjoyed it, and they told their friends, and their friends told their friends. And by the end of the summer, I had a sizable group of kids that were coming for story time. It was an old mixed group of age, and so some of the kids were, getting a little bored when I was reading stories that were too young or too old, so I had to try to please everybody, but some of them would get distracted. So they started fussing around the yard, and the neighbors started complaining that there were too many kids in the yard, that they were going to be up to no good, and eventually I did steal my son's skateboard and a couple of other things. So I knew that I was going to have to change venues if I wanted to continue. It was the following spring that I met a young lady named Danielle Ashley. The Ashley Cultural Center, which is an institution in Central City that was opened by the amazing Carol Bonnell, every year they have a production of the Vagina Monologue. And so I had it's all volunteer based. And they provide cultural programs in Central City, which used to be one of the most violent neighborhoods in New Orleans. And it's an all volunteer amateur cast, and Danielle and I were part of the cast of the Vagina Monologue, hence the pink t-shirts. And we were having a ball. And we became friends. And Danielle told me that she was part of an organization called ATD Fourth World. Because now I'll go back to this because I want to show you ATD Fourth World. Here we go. These are very important people. ATD Fourth World is an organization that was created about 75 years ago, I think, by a French priest, based on the notion that poverty is the real enemy. And that poverty can be anywhere. Poverty is not just in India or Africa or Europe. That's why they call it the fourth world, because poverty is in your back door. Poverty is in the people in your community that do not have the means. And one of the subsets of what they do, so let me see if I can go to, that's the programs. Street library. They created a concept called street library, where basically it was the same thing I was doing, putting out a blanket, bringing out some books, but instead of doing it in somebody's backyard, they would pick a very public space, a street corner, especially in places like New Orleans. You let the kids play out in the street. But there's a couple of adults who are watching. There's a lot of front porch, people live on front porches, and so they're watching the kids. So you do this in view of the community so they can see what you're doing, and you invite them. And spread a blanket and had the books out and as many volunteers as they could. And they sat and read with the children one-on-one. And then they did a little project, the same way you would do it inside of your library. And something that was easy because a lot of those children had enough trauma and enough deceptions that they need to have something that they can be successful at, and something that they could take home after 20, 30 minutes. And send them home and just be consistent, come back every week, and make it a safe space. That was the main thing, make it a safe space. When Danielle took me to the 7th ward and I brought off another and we did Bunny story time, it was such a safe space that none of us had noticed that somebody had gotten shot just a block away from us. So, if you can create that kind of environment, that kind of safe space, we believe that's something for the day. Let's see. Go back to the pictures. Danielle took me to the 7th ward, and so this concept was the same. The main difference was the location. It was, like I said, it was just the street corner. ATD had deemed the level of poverty in New Orleans so dire that volunteers came from Tanzania to read to the children of the 7th ward. I was very inspired and immediately looked to adapt the concept to my little program. So we contacted the community organizer that had a community garden in the lower 9th ward, Jenga. And I was part of the community garden, and I asked Jenga if we could use the place because it was located right at the corner in view of everybody. But it did have a fence, and it mostly had tables where we could sit and be comfortable. And also we could get the kids to become part of the garden and do that as an activity, so it was a very good fit for both of them. And she said yes. So that's Jenga and Danielle and my friend at the community garden. And so we started the lower 9th ward street library. Throughout the summer of 2011 and all the way through 2012, children came every Friday afternoon from all over the neighborhood. We had up to 30 kids at some point. First, a core group of my little neighbors, and then little by little, what I call the feral kids, which was basically, like I said, they just let the kids go. So we had little packs of kids that would go and get into trouble, throw rocks at abandoned houses. There were a lot of those playing in abandoned houses, playing in empty lots of those in the lower 9th ward. But then they'd get tired of that, or they'd get tired of the neighbors calling the cops on them. So they started seeing us, and we looked like we were having a good time. So they started coming in little by little and, becoming part of the program. I'm forever indebted to my friend and neighbor, Karen Theodore, and to the wonderful people of 884th Road who came week after week to read to our children, and then went back to the 7th ward to do the same thing the next day, so we were helping each other out all the time. So this is some of the pictures of what was going on in the garden at that time. The garden was great, but it did have its drawback. There was no place to store the books. So every week, and remember, I don't drive, so I had to figure out either from Danielle or from Carl or somebody to pick me up with the book collection. Then we had to pick up a lot of the kids, the ones that were not immediately there. We had to try to convince the parents to let them come and pick them up. Then there was the weather. Which can be brutal in Louisiana. It gets too hot in the summer, it gets rainy, we get hurricanes, the bugs are horrible. So there was a lot of time where we just couldn't. I remember one time we were down to 3 kids and we had it in the back of Danielle's car. We were making balloons with little balls with beans and balloons in the back of her car. It was pretty funny. One time we spent an evening making, there was not an hurricane, step before, tropical storm that was announced. There was huge amounts of rain, and so we couldn't have street library, especially not outside. So we spent 2 evenings just making little bags of coloring pages and crayons and little books. And then we went in Danielle's car and distributed them throughout the houses of the families where we knew they had like 7 kids in 2 rooms and nothing to do for the next 3 days because it was going to pour. And the car nearly flooded 3 times. And people were very grateful for the bag, but they looked at us like we were absolutely out of our minds. We were right. Yeah. In the fall of 2011, something amazing happened. A lovely gentleman by the name of Jim Selden contacted me. Jim looks like a little bit of a hippie version of Santa Claus. And he works for an amazing organization called Books to Kids. Books to Kids, here we go. And Jim spends most of his time driving his pickup truck around the country and going to all the secondhand Goodwill, library sales, etc. There's a huge secondhand book place in Tennessee that he loves to go. McKay's? Anybody familiar with McKay's? Anyway, he loves going to McKay's. And he fills his truck with all the best books that he can afford on a little budget from Plenty.org. Plenty.org is Plenty International. It was founded by a lovely group of people. They were hippies out of San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, who towards the end of the 70s piled everything in the yellow school bus and moved to the woodlands of Tennessee. And they created the last remaining commune called the Farm. And it's still operating today. And they do all kinds of wonderful things throughout the world. They have actually bees and all kinds of lovely stuff. And they sponsor books for kids. And so Jim goes all over the country. He collects the cheapest available, best quality books he can, and then he delivers them to sites of places where children are in dire need to have the books. So he came to me because he was doing a book sale, bought books at a book sale for the public library at the MLK branch, and he met my lovely colleague, and she said, well, you want to talk to Laurence? And so he came and he said, well, I'd like to make you a proposal. I'd like to give you books. I'm like, okay, great. Then he took up his glasses and he's putting them down and looks at me really intently. He goes, but I have one condition. Not very good about conditions, but okay, what is it? We insist you give the books to the children. And I just started laughing because it's like, really? You might have to twist my arm on this one, Jim. There was this lovely man offering me a dream come true and somehow seemed to think that there was a problem in asking me to give the books to the children. So I told him that, yes, you might have to twist my arm, but I'll do my best. And the thing is, apparently he'd had problems before where some people had said yes, and they had taken the books and they had not distributed them, and that's why he was a little bit wary. But we became very good friends, and ever since then, he's been coming to my house about once every 2 or 3 months, and he's giving me hundreds of books. And the best part is that he brings me what I ask, as much as he can. If I tell him, Jim, I really need books on sports, I've got to have books on sport, he will scour everything that he can and know that books on sports are for me and bring me much of the stuff that I really need. So it's wonderful. So ever since I've had hundreds of books, so we kept the program, but at the end, when we send the children home, now we can send them with a free book every time. That was before I had my house, and so soon I had more books piling up in my tiny little apartment than I had children to give them away to, at least in the immediate neighborhood. So the problem is, and always is, in poor areas, it's transportation. People have transportation issues. Not everybody can afford a car. I never knew how people could do it before, and I still don't know. And I was on a bicycle myself until last May. So children whose parents are already, if you have 7 kids, and if you have 1 kid, it's hard to get out the door in any given morning with 1 or 2 children. If you have 7, it's just indescribable. And if you have to borrow somebody's car, you don't have the gas money, you need to take it to go to work, you need to take it to the groceries, so those kids, we had a really hard time getting them to us. So I had a basket on my bicycle, and I started putting the books in the basket. And I would just go out, and whenever I went out in the neighborhood and the kids were out, I was like, hey, want a book? And usually by the 7th block out of the door, they were gone, because the basket is about this big. And then, so one day I was in the city, and I saw this guy driving a tricycle, and it had a big platform in the front. And I was like, yeah, I want this. Anyway, so in August of 2012, I was able, with the help of a city program from low-income first-time buyer, to buy a house a few blocks away from where the garden was. And it was what's called a shotgun double, so imagine like 2 apartments exactly the mirror image next to each other in the same structure. So I'm living on one side, and then on the living room on the other side, I opened a little library, which is the one that you saw in the program that Dr. Bird showed you. So that's in the library. I think I have a terrible picture of the collection, it's too small, of the collection. So we started the program now in my house. It's open every Saturday from 1 to 3, and it's the same thing. They just come, but now we don't have to worry about the weather. And now I've been known enough in the neighborhood that they knew that I wasn't going to abscond the children. Although I have to I have pulled up in front of people's houses with a truck saying, we're gonna take your 7 children for a couple of hours. And they're like, oh yes, and would you like my phone number? Anyway, but I'm trying to get more and more parents involved, but they're just so incredibly happy to have it somewhere else for a couple of hours. I can't believe that. I'm ahead of myself. So those are some of my regulars. So it's the same thing. We read one-on-one with whatever volunteers we have, and we do a little project, and we send them over. Okay, so when I saw the person with the tricycle, I started inquiring in my favorite bike shops, and first it was like, oh yeah, there's one guy who's selling it for, secondhand, blah, blah. Anyway, by the time I finally caught up, they were all gone or disappeared or turned into Mardi Gras floats or whatever. So I ended up having to throw a fundraiser and eventually raised $1,000. They're industrial, they're made for transporting goods inside of warehouses. So they're made in Baton Rouge, and they delivered it to my house. I threw a piece of fabric just to make it look pretty. Also because when I'm riding with this, if it rains, I can fold the fabric over the books so that it's a little bit protected. But this was for about, I would say, a year and a half. This was the only operating bookmobile in Orleans Parish. Now, just as an aside, I just want to say, it's not like I did not try to go to New Orleans Public Library. They just weren't interested. I tried to go to the city, I tried to go to the public library, I was just told there was no budget, and the story, goodbye. Anyway, so I got this, and every Saturday I started putting the books and writing it. It looks cool, but it's really a workout, especially, I don't know how many of you are familiar with New Orleans, and especially after Katrina, the streets they're not smooth. They're really not. The potholes are ridiculous. And so when this is laden with books in the front, and the sun beating down on you, and then you have a massive pothole, it's a real workout. I have awesome legs. And then it's really heavy to maneuver. And to the point where one time I just stumbled into an intersection, and it was in the middle of a street fight, a bunch of teenagers. I was really not trying to be heroic, I just couldn't break my way out of the situation. So, once you're in the situation, you deal the best way you can. So that day I had happened to have a whole new arrival of mom there. I was so happy. I had all these like Naruto and really cool stuff. And I come in the middle of like a bunch of really angry teenagers. One of them already had his arm in a cast and was ready to break the cast on somebody else's head. Didn't hurt enough the first time. And I just pulled out my manga and I was like, you guys, first of all, there's a cop car 5 blocks away, which was true. And I said, you're just bored. You just want to read a book, right? And it worked. One of the kids just like grabbed my manga and like, yeah, man, just read a book. And this person, it's amazing. Anyway, you have to live in New Orleans to understand the importance of parades in our lives. The amount of time that goes into planning them and getting costumes together and, raising the money for the band and all that, and then the day itself, and it's really at the core of what it means to be in New Orleans. I want you all to understand that none of the parades that go on in New Orleans, including Mardi Gras Day itself, which is huge, none of this is corporate sponsored. This is all raised privately by the citizens of New Orleans. It's just amazing. And they make all the throws, the specialty throws are handmade, they work on it all year long. And they each have their unique style and their unique flavors, and they're very spiritual. And so one day I was at this lovely parade, it's called the Red Beans and Rice, because on Monday in New Orleans we eat rice and red beans. And one of my friends started a parade called the Red Beans and Rice Parade. And the creativity, this is all made out of red beans and rice. Amazing. And so I was talking to my dear friend Anne-Marie, who's a fellow children's librarian and also an avid parader. And I told her, I said, look, give me 3 years and I'm going to have my own parade. I'm going to have a children's book parade. Instead of throwing beads, we're going to throw books. She just looked at me and she said, what do you need 3 years for? Just do it. That's my girl. I wear sneakers, but Nike has my vote. Just do it. You may not be perfect the first time, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, but you're not going to know until you do it. And once you may not have enough money to start with, but once you get the ball rolling, things will start happening, and just do it. I was reminded of that when I went to Nashville last summer to visit my dear friend Jim. And of course, the first place he took me to, being the nerds that we were, was the library. And they have this they have this amazing library, it's just ruling. And they have an entire wing for civil rights movement. And then right there, there's a quote, I don't know how to do the pictures, by one of my favorite people. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's this. Yeah. By John Lewis. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? And that's basically the idea. If you see something that needs to be done, just do it. So I got down to it and I asked around, and 3 months later, I had designed a route. I found places where I could stop the parade. Somebody would provide snacks. Somebody had donated a float. We raised money to pay for the most expensive thing, I actually know, besides the band, was the police escort. And so I walked into the city police headquarters, to ask for a parade permit, a police escort permit. And they're like, okay, so how many, we have one float. We follow, I don't know, we have maybe 20, 40 children, I don't know, 40, let's say 50 people at the most. One van. And disappeared, waiting, comes back, and it's like, it's going to be $800 and something. I was like, what? wait a second. It's going to be kids in the lower ninth floor with one little handful float giving out books. And so he looked a little embarrassed. So he went back into the office again, and then came back out like, oh, okay, it'll be $525. At this point, there was no more negotiating, so I had to bite the bullet and pay the $525. But we paid it, and so on May 9th of 2013, we had our first Lower Ninth Ward Street Library book parade, and we gave about 800 books, and we started a tradition. So I think that picture is, that was the first parade. So we made the children painted the banner. I think there was the Pied Piper that year. Jim is always the Lorax. That's why I put the picture up. You remember when I showed you the pictures of the bookmobile? There's one that says the Lorax says give books to kids. That's my homage to Jim. And that's the float. So it's great. It's the natchez, the boat, the steamboat natchez. So the tiers are really good for putting books in and displaying them. Um, I love those faces. Oh, that was this year. So I had just been given the bus before I painted it. So I had this big yellow bus. So of course I had to be.
Oh, Miss Frizzle.
It's Frizzle. Good job. You know the children's librarian. But I couldn't find any one of, but I found a little stuffed alligator, which being in Louisiana made perfect sense anyway. So the kids just, they dress up as their favorite story character, they hand out books to everybody around them. That's my favorite. Oh, well, that's, okay. So we're gonna need to get on this one then. Anyway, so all of this may sound like a lot of fun, and it has been. I've had a wonderful time. But it's not always fun and game. We were talking about, taking risks. Living in New Orleans is taking risks. It's the city in the United States that has the highest per capita crime rate. It's also one of the cities that has the highest level of high school dropouts rate. It's also the city that has the dubious privilege of having the highest level of incarceration in the world. I had my bicycle stolen 6 times in 5 years. My house was broken into twice. The little house that I was living in the first time with the little kids and the family, when Gregory had an argument with her boyfriend, he set her car on fire in the driveway. That was exciting. I've had people around me murdered. 3 of my street library kids were shot. We all have PTSD down there. We deal daily, and we just try to be kind, just one day at a time. Most of the children that I serve have lost a parent to gun violence, incarceration, drunk driving. That's just part of the course. But it's also been one of the most rewarding times of my life. And I love New Orleans. It's my home. I never loved the place that much. So I choose to stay day after day. And then shortly after the first parade, I got a phone call saying that I had been selected to be the inaugural recipient of the Lemon Sticker Award. And which was amazing. And got rock star status overnight, which was rather funny. It was very gratifying for my family, which had been at the best questioning of my life choices. So at least I was able to say, well, see, people think it's great. And my son has always been very supportive, but there were some people who thought I was a little out of touch. But it's put me in one of the most beautiful cities, the most amazing culture, the most amazing people, and people like Jennifer Francis who donated the book bus. And so this is my life every day.
It looks pretty rewarding.
Thank you. It is. My main thing, and I like to stay on that book for a long time, first of all because she's gorgeous. This was taken a few months ago in what used to be called Desire Project, which was one of the most infamous projects in New Orleans, which was actually bulldozed to the ground after the 1970s Black Panther Land riot. And now it's called the Estates. It's still a project. And there's hundreds of kids, and there's absolutely nothing for them to do. So I just pulled in the bookmobile about a week after I received it because I was just so excited. No, a week after I got my driver's license. I was so excited, and all these little kids came and were so happy. I love being able to hand this book to this child because it looks like her. And I need more books like that. And that's the only thing that I get the blues about is because I get absolutely no funding. All of my books are donated. And I get lots of donations. People are really being generous and eager to give me books. But the people that are generous and eager to give me books are mostly well-minded, upper middle class people who are giving me their children's books. And their children tend not to look like this. So I need more books that appeal to my children, to the reluctant readers, to the kids who can, because one of the ways that we deny people their humanity is when we deny them representation and when we deny them their stories. So it's not just enough to throw books at kids all day long. What matters is to give them books in which they can see themselves. And that's what I have the hardest time about, is that I don't get enough of those books, the books that they want to read, the books. The worst is when I do have those books and they don't want them because, that was the one that killed me. When Daniel Hackler gave me the award, it came with a little gift card for First Books for 1,000 books. So, oh boy, I've been shopping. And one of the things that I got was hundreds of copies, because they give you a choice and you have to buy them by the box. And so one of them was The Negro Speaks of Rivers by Laurence Hughes, and beautifully illustrated. It's got a picture of the bridge in New Orleans and everything. So, oh yeah, give them to me. And I put the first copy to one of my kids and I look! And he went, why would I want a book about Africa? Not about Africa, okay, look at the bridge, it's right there. But because it had a black kid on it, he thought it was about Africa because he was so unused to seeing black kids on book covers. That was really rough. So we get into it slowly, because all the little girls want princesses and they want Frozen and they want, I'm not trying to push that stuff. I'm getting there, one day at a time. Anyway. And so, yes, it has been rewarding. I've met wonderful people, including all of you today, which I'm very grateful for. So I would like to thank you once again for having me here today. And I'd like to thank my son, who cannot be here today, but is always here with me in spirit. And for all the friends and neighbors and colleagues without whom none of this would have been possible. And I'd like to end this with an image that reflects on our situation in general, my feeling, my philosophy, and what happened in Paris yesterday. And I think it's actually that.
You had mentioned that the New Orleans Public Library wasn't interested at all. But since you've been recognized and you're a rock star now, are they interested anymore?
Okay, I want everybody to understand that everything I said is about the management of the public library. My colleagues are above and beyond. They actually risk their job to help me. If anything, I'm embarrassed the management of the public library. They want even less to do with me since they were.
Wow.
I'm really sorry because I'm much rather have this. When I did receive the award, I have to say that the CEO of the New Orleans Public Library sent me an email saying, congratulations. And I said, thank you very much. I just wish I could tell them I was only doing my job. And I never heard from him again. Anybody else?
Where do you want your, do you accept donations from everywhere or only certain places? Do you have an address where you have your donations sent?
Absolutely, so, and then I realized I just did not even bring, business cards because it costs me a lot of money to produce. Here you go. So, that's my website, and everything is there. One of my favorite features is my Amazon wish list, which is fueled by the community. So whenever I don't have something that the kids want, I put it on that list. There's some really interesting stuff in there, especially the teenagers. They always amaze me at stuff they want. You can donate cash here. You can go and follow Facebook. Every week I put pictures of the latest events or whatever. And then this address, contact, how to help, the programs, etc., etc. So that's the way to. Yes, ma'am.
Where do you see yourself with this project in 5 years? Ideally, what would your ideal be in 5 years?
It's funny because I have no idea. That's the kind of questions that I keep being asked at jobs and job interviews and things like that. And I really don't know. It was not really my idea to become the outreach department of New Orleans. I just came to New Orleans to help. And at first, it's like I came and said, what can I do? And somebody said, well, why don't you start an open mic? So I organized an open mic, and it was really successful, but then the venue kind of folded. And the thing is, like, things moving a lot. Like a lot of the children I serve are from households where there's no consistency, there's a lot of problems, so they move away. I constantly lose kids. Because they have to leave and they can't be forwarding address because of crazy boyfriends that set your car on fire, or they could be sheriffs or people you owe money to or things like that. So it's very much a day-to-day thing. The cool thing is that 4 years later, when I got the van, I actually stumbled back on the kids from the open mic, and they were all in art school, and they're the ones who painted the van, so made me really happy. The goal ultimately, what I'm trying to do, because I'm only one person and I'm really not trying to be superwoman, I'm 53 years old and I'm getting tired, and I'm really glad I'm driving instead of pushing a tricycle. I still bike to work every day, but the tricycle is really heavy. Is to empower the community. That eventually I'm trying to really get the people from the community to say, it's not, hey, look, I have a master's degree, that's what I need to do that job. It's like, I would rather say, this is not really that hard, and I'll help. Just call me if you need help, but you can start. If I can do this, you can do it. Trust me. I'm really lazy.
Have you ever heard of World Book Night?
World Book Night?
Yes.
No.
So World Book Night, and I don't know the address or anything, but you can Google them, and you don't have to be a librarian, you can empower your community. They can sign up for World Book Night, and they select from a list of books, and the World Book Night people send you a case of those books.
Book night as in night and day, or as in night in shining armor?
Night and day.
Okay.
And so it's one night a year, they send out boxes of books. You could be the coordinator, so then all your community people could sign up to different books. And the goal is to put books in the hands of people that don't normally get them. So you just go pass them out wherever.
Okay.
But that sounds like something.
And I'm a storyteller for a wonderful, wonderful program called Prime Time Reading Time. These folks, they're awesome. And they do a program which is 6 weeks at a time. They take away every excuse that you have for not being able to attend a literacy event for your children. They feed you, They provide child support, child care, and they'll even pay for your transport if you can't make it on your own. They'll bring you over. For 6 weeks, once a week, families come into a public space, and there's a professional storyteller, which is usually me, and then a scholar, which is somebody who's a teacher or a PhD or somebody. And we read from a very select group of books that have been carefully picked. Read the story with the kids and ask humanities-based questions like, did you think this was fair? Was this a happy story or not a happy story? Did anything like that ever happen to you? There's no good answer, right answer, wrong answer. It's all about getting the parents to have a discussion with children around humanities theme, around the book. And so they come, they have dinner, they put the 7 to 5 years old with somebody who's going to amuse them, and then the others come in the room and we read, we have the discussion, and then they're sent home with the books to be read for next week. And that goes on for 6 weeks at a time. And I'm really happy because I'm like Elizabeth, is she going, no, all right. Oh, here a little bit. I have trouble on my forehead. So I've been nudging them and nudging them and nudging them, and actually at some point they didn't want to give me the grant anymore. So I just went and did it on my own. Okay, give the book the grant. But I was giving the books away. I said, what's the point? You let them read, but then they don't have the books in their home. So now they're going to give the books away to the kids. All right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Where does that drive and that grit come from? It sounds like you really love helping the underdog. So where does that come from?
I don't know. My family's of Jewish origin, so maybe that comes from that. We've been the underdog for a long time. But generally, I don't know. I mean, I'm a big fan of Dr. King, always have been. I think that if you expect fairness from others, you have to make sure that everybody's got an equal playing field. That's all. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for coming. I hope you will come to other iDEAL summits in the future. Evaluation form. There's an evaluation form in your packet. Fill it out now. Anybody who's still online with us, we will send you a link. And we appreciate the folks online and everyone who came here today. And thank you. Thank you.